Okay. All right. Good morning. Not sure. Not sure how to acknowledge the excitement in New York, but anywho, uh, what a better way to celebrate than to learn Torah. That's my go-to line for just about everything that happens in life. Okay, so last week we did the simon of Reish Beis Zion, Nichum Avelim and Bikur Cholim on Shabbos. So hopefully we feel more comfortable and confident about those topics. Funny story though, actually, because we're talking about since we talked about Nichum Avelim from last week. So last night I was Menachem Avel. Michael Doppelt was sitting Shiva. I was the only person last night because of the Knicks. Oh, I was the only person who was there. Anyways, so just like speaking of the how the Knicks have penetrated into Jewish life. Anyways, you have to go to Lizzo. Right, correct. Yeah, correct. So just funny little story from last night. Anyways, Reish Peches. So let's move on to this simon. Again, things are generally in order in the Shulchan Aruch of how life goes. And so we had finished Musaf, and then it was okay after Musaf's over. So then you start to think about what are the things you do after davening is over in the morning, and you might run into somebody who's an avel, you might run into somebody who is not well. So that's perhaps why that was in that spot. And now this is a topic that does really come to a head when it comes to post Musaf, is the halacha of a tanis of a fast day. Of fasting, I should say, of fasting on Shabbos, because often davening will be so late, it will end so late that you've kind of fasted. Because remember, there's a few halachos at play here. One is that in general in the mornings, one is supposed to daven first before they eat, before you take care of your own. This is the Gemara Brachos. Before you take care of your own, you sort of really start to enjoy the pleasures of life of eating. One should make sure to daven for for themselves first. So that's a general halacha, and then you couple that with after you finish davening Shachris on Shabbos morning, you're not allowed to eat anything, and not even have water until you make Kiddush first. You're supposed to make Kiddush before you even have anything following the conclusion of davening Shachris. So you can understand that if you have like most people when they daven, there's Shachris and there's Gleining and then there's Musaf, and by the time you're really eating, it's quite late. Especially if shul only starts at 9 o'clock, right? If you're davening in an earlier minyan, this is not so much of an issue. And it was more on the days, also much more of an issue in the days of old when shul. I don't know what happened here. When I grew up, boy, shul was long. It was like 9 to 12. It was like a whole. It was the whole production. And now it's not quite the same. For at least here, I noticed it more. It's like 11:45. It's like everyone's on shpilkas because like this was a long davening, and I get it. Okay, so but it is something to think about, particularly in the winter months. So let's take a look at what the Shulchan Aruch has to say in Sif Aleph. Excuse me. You are not allowed. One is prohibited from fasting on Shabbos until the 8th hour, meaning midday. 6 hours. Sorry, 6 hours. What did I say? 8. Sorry. That's what happens when you watch a game till late in the night. Okay, until 6 hours. Okay. Okay, let's look at the Ramah here. Yeah, Reish Pecha, yeah. And even to learn or daven, see, learning afterwards. By the way, the Ashkar Minyan does this really well, right? They have their Kiddush, and then there's learning groups, right? So they get their food in, and then there's the learning that goes on. So even if you're wanting to learn or to daven, right? You want to daven a lengthier davening. No, you shouldn't do that. You should not have an extended davening that goes past the midpoint of the day. And if you want to have a post minyan shear, if it's going to cause you to eat so late that it's after the midpoint of the day, that's not allowed.
Question. We had this conversation. If I have to go past, if I'm davening, and I'm davening still in Shachrit by 12:10,
Mm-hmm.
and I asked you,
Yeah, it's late.
can I go to prior to 1:30 or whatever for the afternoon, or when do I cut it off?
That's a separate topic. Shachris should be done by the fourth hour of the day, and then you should if Musaf is dragging on, maybe you should take Kiddush before Musaf and have a nash. That's what we're going to talk about more a little bit. Okay, let's take a look at Sif Katan Aleph down below in the Mishnah Berurah. Careful here because there are two Alephs. Please don't get confused. One is Reish Pei Zayin. Now the bottom Aleph is Reish Pei Ches. Okay, Ad Sheshos Degam Bechol Haochel Acha Sheshos Havei Kizorik Even Lachemes. Okay, Nikra Kimo Tanis B'Shabbos. So even on the weekdays, if you delay eating on a regular weekday, eating after the sixth hour, that's like throwing a stone into a bottle. It's like imagine a little pebble into a bottle. If you have a big, 2-liter, there's imagery here, right? So imagine like a 2-liter bottle, or imagine this bottle that's right in front of me here, this big gallon size. If you put a little stone in it, it doesn't fill anything up. If this is your stomach, and it's an empty bottle, right? And you drop a little stone in it, what have you really done? It's like it's really. That's the imagery here. Like you're so empty that you have a little food. It's like you know how much you're gonna have to do to catch up to fill this thing up. You're way behind in terms of where you should be. In terms of what you've eaten. So that's why it's called. It's as if it's called Nikra Kamotanis B'Shabbos. It's as if it's like you fasted on Shabbos, and that's a problem in of itself. Now, why is fasting on Shabbos a problem? Intuitively, we sort of understand why it's a problem, but let's read the rest of this Mishnah Berurah, and then I want to look at the Be'er Halacha, who gives us a couple of Makoros that are interesting about the Halacha of a Tanis on Shabbos. But let's finish the Mishnah Berurah. U'l'shem Tanis afilu sha'achas aser. Now, if I even for 1 hour on Shabbos, I say I'm not eating this hour because I'm fasting. I'm sort of in my mind even declaring that I will not eat right now for spiritual reasons, right? I want to do tshuva for something I said on Shabbos morning. Even if you for 1 hour, no, that's not allowed because they're not allowed to engage in ta'anis on Shabbos. You might not want to eat because you might not be hungry, but to sort of declare in your own mind that I'm fasting is not permitted.
So Yom Kippur is a big Kiddush.
That on Yom Kippur that I don't eat on if it's a Shabbos Yom Kippur, like we had last year, right? It was last year, yeah. Then it's a big Kiddush, but that's where you say that two Deoraisa laws are in conflict, and this is how it's resolved. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, understands this is Shabbat Shabbaton. It overrides the rest of the other aspects of Shabbos that come in contact with it, which is namely eating and drinking. So yes,
that's the only one. Trump.
Correct. By the way, if you have a Tisha B'av falls out on Shabbos, it's nidcha. If any fast day falls out on Shabbos, nidcha. Even by the way, you have to be very, very cautious. What if the 10th of Teves falls out on a Friday, and there's a whole suffix? Because usually you wait until it's nightfall to end the fast. But nightfall, what do you mean? The Shabbos starts at sundown. So you have to be very cautious to really not acknowledge that you're fasting. Right? Why am I not eating right now? Because I'm davening. That's what I always do at the beginning of Shabbos, and I'll make kiddush, at the time when it's dark, But you're not really supposed to be, for sure not. I don't know what they do in the southern hemisphere where it's a longer day. By the way, it's a really good question. When the fast of 10th of Teves is probably more complicated. It's a long fast day for them. Here, it's now you don't think, but why would you ever dive in a plug on mincha? No one ever do that. But I don't know what they do in the southern hemisphere on the 10th of Teves. I don't think you should bring it in early if it's if you have such a Shabbos. Yeah.
Get ready for Shabbos.
No, not getting ready. Just fasting on Shabbos. No, not about getting ready.
Sorot Teves doesn't start at the night.
We make kiddush. That's why I'm always careful to say we make kiddush at Seisa Kochav. At the 3 stars. That's the time when you're first putting something, I guess, into your system for the whole day. V'alkein shelo kadinos in miktas kehilos shemisana b'Shabbos ad samach lachatzos al gzeros. Now this is interesting. He says that there are some communities that are not following the halacha the way they should, because they have declared partial fasts on Shabbos morning until chatzos, until midday, because of a number of gzeros, decrees that were made against the Jewish community, or bad things related to the lack of rain, things that threaten the safety of the community. So look, it's the one time of the week, even Ad Hayom Hazeh, that the majority of the community gets together. And it's a very opportune time to sort of bring people together in a tefillah opportunity. So we're gonna all fast the first half of the day, so that whatever gzeira, whatever terrible decree has been wrought upon our people
Right.
here locally, we're gonna fast, and that, says the Mishnah Berurah, says the Chafetz Chaim, is shelo kedin. That's not really appropriate halachically in terms of our response. You want to fast on a weekday. You want to add by the way, you want to add some tefillos on Shabbos because there's some gzeira that's overhanging the Jewish people. Fine, but to not eat, to declare a fast, is the problematic response on Shabbos. Yeah, Simeon.
Right, but these are voluntary fasts. These are not fasts that are mandated midrabanan, and that puts them in a whole different category.
100%. Yeah. Look, by the way, even the Rabbanan fasts that are prescribed on a particular day are not allowed on Shabbos. Yeah, correct. This is Shimon is going to talk about a din of Tanis Chalom, where there may be an exception, by the way, because of we'll see that people have a fast. They had to declare a fast because of a horrible dream that they had that seems to have predicted something, or some awful thing was going to happen. We'll talk about this whole topic. We're not going to get to it probably today. Probably next week we'll get to it. It's a topic that is hard to grasp them, honestly, because I don't even remember my dreams most of the time, so it's hard to relate to such a topic. But we'll get to it. Now, if you have some food before Musaf, so let's say you're a kahila that has extended davening. Davening really, really goes long. So what should you do? You probably should have something before Musaf. And we talked about it's not ideal. Ideal is better to eat after Musaf. But if that's your situation, you probably should stop and make Kiddush and have something, some little bit of something, and then go back to davening Musaf. So if you're going to be if you do have that situation, then mutar hisacher yosem misheshos, then that's not like then the fast is gone. Like you're not fasting at that point. So then it's not about you can delay after 6 hours. That's not a problem.
It's the origin of the Kiddush part.
Correct. They will tell you. They'll point right to this simon and say, "This is the reason we exist."
That's the time we should fast,
Right. Correct. Yeah. This is their line. They want to push the sheshos down the road.
And is it, by the way, till the 6th hour, the meaning, or is it through the 6th hour? And then I sort of never know because the wording is right.
Is it ad b'chlal or ad v'lo ad b'chal? I think here this is talking about midday ad sheshos. Let me see if there's a clarification here in the Aruch HaShulchan on that point, though. Oh, here, by the way, see, he clarifies it. Good, I'm happy I read it. Also, listanos b'Shabbos u'l'shem tanis afilu sha'ach hasaser v'gam b'stam tzarich lechol kodem chatzos. Here he writes chatzos. Da'hacha isla b'Yerushalmi sof perak gimel detanis. Also, listanos b'Shabbos ad sheshos afilu osik b'Torah v'utfila aser.
So till the 6th hour.
Yeah.
So
yes.
So there are really
Yeah,
two
Lloyd.
things that are involved. One is a conscious decision not to eat
Yeah.
on Shabbat, and the other piece is failing to eat by Chatzot.
Right.
In other words, whatever reason you may not have paid mind.
Right, and it's so like you've almost made this into sort of a fast day.
You've had an absence of food.
Yeah.
That doesn't make the cut. And same way, consciously not eating, even for, let's say,
For a short amount of time. Right.
That's also off.
Correct. Yes, correct. Both are very good. Yes, both of those are problematic. Um, okay, so let's take a look now at the Be'er Halacha.
Rav,
Oh yes, sure.
these are Sha'ot Zmaniyot, right?
For sure. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
In fact, there's yeah. Sorry, you finish, then I'll
so
jump in.
it seems that uh, that's six halachic hours, irrespective of the davening. So if they just finished laning, they just finished shacharis, and it's now on Sheish Sha'od Zmaniyot, then according to this, I have to at least have a little something
Yeah,
before I go into Musaf.
that's correct. That's correct. Most of the time, this is not an issue. The one time you really have to think about this carefully is like a day like Rosh Hashanah, which isn't Shabbos, but like, by the way, this year the first day is on Shabbos, and also on Yom Tov. Also, fasting is also problematic. So it's really kind of a very similar halacha, and that's why there are some yeshivas that have very lengthy davening, and they will pause before Tkiyah Shofar, and have kiddush and have some little nash. So they avoid the idea of fasting on the day.
These yeshiva places,
They do that. They do that here in Florida, Rav.
Right.
Kiddush.
Right. Yeah.
In the minion we have here in Florida, they do just that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's why
They actually have a kiddush. They
Yeah.
actually have a kiddush before Tkiyas Shofar on Rosh Hashanah.
All right, and this is for this particular reason exactly. So that's where this comes from. The other time, maybe a problem is if you're davening somewhere and the chazan is going on, and it's a winter Shabbos here in the northern hemisphere, and the chazan is going on in Musaf, and it becomes a show. So then you have this speaker and that speaker. Then it's a little bit of a problem because you can start davening already mincha around 12:30, which means like around 12 o'clock. Our time, you're already at Chatzos Hayom. So you have to be very careful for the lengthy davening in the winter time.
Because the Sha'ot Zmaniyot are very short
They're much shorter.
in the winter.
The midday doesn't move much, right, all year.
Yeah.
Only a few minutes.
It's because of the clock change, really, that a big thing. The clock change is the one that creates the artificial problem.
During the summer and in the winter, it's around 12.
Right. Correct.
You'll see it.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. So let's jump into the Be'er Halacha here in terms of why is it problematic to fast on Shabbos? We sort of get it. They're like, oh, Shabbos is about eating food, but why can't I if I have a personal situation that I need to fast? Why am I prohibited from doing such a thing? So the Be'er Halacha writes, the first Be'er Halacha on this siman, if Isser Tanis b'Shabbos yesh deos b'poskim hurak midivrei Kabbalah midechsiv karasa la Shabbos oneg, which is from Sefer Yeshayahu, chapter 58. That Shabbos is called, you shall call Shabbos a delight. And delight, by the way, there's even a Tosfos in the Arvei Psachim who talks about this is the source, the pasuk that's the source for the idea of ein kiddush al b'mkom suda. That kiddush only has to be made. The karasa la Shabbos, you're going to call Shabbos. How do you call Shabbos with your words in the kiddush? You're calling oneg. How you can be eating? The Tosfos explains you can only call out Shabbos in the place where there's oneg. What is oneg? Oneg is the seuda. Oneg is the meal. So some say it's midivrei Kabbalah. It's from the words of the Nevi'im. So it's not a de'oraisa per se, but it still has some high level. Okay, we'll call it d'Rabbanan, but it's really maybe from the from the Nevi'im. What was that?
Definitely has authority.
Authority, correct. Or some people say, oh, midoraisa. Some people say that the prohibition against fasting is a biblical prohibition on Shabbos. Midechsiv ichluhu hayom v'gomer. There's the pasuk around the parsha of the man, where it mentions the idea of Yom 3 times, and of Lechem 3 times, and that's where the idea of Shalosh Seudos comes from in the Torah. It's a hint in the Torah, but the bottom line is the Torah instructs you should prepare whatever you need to prepare, bake whatever you need to bake, cook whatever you need to cook, so that you can enjoy on Shabbos. So some people say, how could, if you look at the pasuk, it's clear as daylight. Eating and enjoying the day is an essential part of the way we observe Shabbos. So much so that you would be violating this pasuk if you fasted. Now, And then he says, so you take a look at the Chubas Harashba, etc. Venira Pasha the Tanis ad Sheshos Lekulial Mamid Rabbanon. Everyone agrees that okay, maybe it's not the full day fasting is a violation of biblical law, but everyone agrees that at least it's a Rabbanon to it's a prohibition mid Rabbanon to fast through the midpoint of the day. So again, whether it's mid Rabbanon, maybe there's some aspect of it that's Mizivre Kabbalah Midiroisa. It's not a small thing to be fasting on Shabbos. It's a violation certainly of certain the spirit of certain psukim in the Torah and also in Navi. Okay, let's go to Sif Beis. Umispal al Aser. Okay, but what about I'm davening? Come on, I'm doing spiritual things. Why you're knocking me over the head for doing? I like to daven. I take my time with davening. So why am I getting punished for this? So mispal aser lefiza ashliach tzibur shimin again ve'ein yotze mi beis hakneses ad achar sheishos shelo gehogenu. Fire him. Shliach tzibur that is singing. He's minagain. He's all the tunes. Everything has a tune and another tune, and he's repeating and repeating, right? And so nobody's able to leave the shul until after the sheishos have passed. That's not okay. Shloka Hogan, who it's not. That's not right. And he points out, as we just pointed out here in the room a moment ago, particularly in the winter time when the days are short. And by the way, if you go to certain parts of Poland, the days are even probably a little shorter than they are here in the winter time, if I'm not mistaken. Right? It's a little more north. So, what was that? England's right. Exactly. Good. Yeah. So the days are even more compressed from the time that the sun comes up. Umikol shekain be Yom Tov, and all the more so on Yom Tov, right? That this is not okay. The daven that goes, past the midpoint of the day on Yontif. Yontif is, by the way, there's a mitzvah Simchas Yontif, which is defined by eating and drinking, which you don't even have on Shabbos per se. So it's a kol shekain Yontif. The chazan should not do this. Milvad Rosh Hashanah, except for Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah, you have all the piyutim. Here's a little extra comment here. You have all the piyutim. And there, so in the extra comments, he quotes later on in Shulchan Aruch that there on Yom Rosh Hashanah shemutalis anos Rosh Hashanah kishemispal al chatzos. If you're davening on Rosh Hashanah, so that's an okay reason for having fasted for part of the day. As the Ramah writes later on in Shulchan Aruch, he says if you're going to add the piyutim and the tefillos, but if it's because you're adding tunes, that's the reason you're going to be late to lunch. No, he says that's ein laharich. You shouldn't lengthen the nigunim. Ve'im chal Rosh Hashanah b'Shabbos. He writes shelo yarich lachar chatzos. Like this year, it's going to be on Shabbos. There's a separate problem. Now you have Shabbos, and to fast on Shabbos again is a violation of one of these psukim. So Rosh Hashanah that falls out on Shabbos, you have to be very cautious about. That's Yontif. That's the Shalosh Regalim. Chatzi lachem v'chatzi laHashem. That you're supposed to enjoy. Part of the day is part of the experience is. I don't think on Rosh Hashanah we apply that drasha. I think that's a Shalosh Regalim drasha. And that's why everyone agrees on Shavuos is kula lachem, right? And that's the whole drasha into itself. Why is it that it's really we should make about ourselves, and making sure we really enjoy the blintzes and the cheesecake? Exactly.
Yeah, but
so Rav,
regular Rosh
Oh, 1 second, Simeon Shlomo's going to say something first, and then I'll come to you.
On a regular day, you daven until 2:00, and Shabbat you're going to finish 11:30. It just doesn't.
Say it again. On Shabbat, you're
Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah.
Defined to say on Shabbat you have to do it faster. So it would be a situation where your regular Rosh Hashanah on a regular day ends up like 1:30 or 2:00.
Right. So you have to compress it.
11:30. It just doesn't start early.
Right. He's saying it doesn't happen, right? We don't do that.
The good news is I'm saying just in talking tachlis here, because it's before the clock changed. To Richie's point, chatzos is like 1:00. so the shul, has actually in more recent years attempted to make sure that the davening is closer to 12:30. Sometimes the chazanim, and I love all of them, I love you guys, but they're marich and the nigunim a little bit. Even though we've really tried to make sure that the davening kind of moves along. This year, perhaps there's also no shofar on the day, so that because of that, the davening is a little bit shorter. But it's something that we have to keep in mind. We have to keep in mind this year that we shouldn't when davening is over, you should really make it your business. Everyone should make it their business to go home, expeditiously to make it for to make kiddush. Yeah. Or right by that, David, there should be some little kiddush here. If you look at your kiddush and have a little fun little nash, and then go home. People don't like to do that here on Rosh Hashanah, and not just here, because it's already a little late, and we want to get right to our lunch. But so you are now all empowered with the knowledge of what's the ideal. So it's not that it's not doable. It's something that we can do. It's in our grasp. Simeon wanted to say something, and then Lloyd, I'll come to you in a moment. Yes.
I just wanted to point out it's first of all on Rosh Hashanah, that's a very difficult mountain to climb. That's very difficult because most shuls that I know go out of their way to retain special chazanim and even choirs. So they are marich the tefillah by virtue of this, the music, the singing.
Yeah.
And it definitely goes on.
Somewhere in Shamayim, the Chafetz Chaim is shaking his head and going like this.
And if you've ever davened, for example, in the great synagogue in Yerushalayim on a Shabbat where they have a choir, forget about it. You have to send out for a pizza or something. It's really stretched out.
I don't agree, but I am very close to this Rabbi Aaron Khan, and in his shul,
he's in Brooklyn.
They start at 7:30 on Rosh Hashanah.
So they end early,
and they have a kiddush at around 2:30.
Wow!
And no, he doesn't allow any extra piyutim. No extra piyutim. They don't allow that
because that was like
just like davening. Pure davening takes them 6 hours.
Wow. So look, in these places that the davening goes long, that's where the eitzah of stop and make kiddush before Tkiyah Shofar, or that time of Tkiyah Shofar, even on Shabbos Shofar. That's where it should come in, because it is a problem. In fact, particularly this year, it's a problem on the first day. Yes, Lloyd, and then we're going to continue.
Another issue of I'm blanking where there's an idea that one ought not to start Musaf before a certain time.
For Musaf you can daven at any point during the daytime once it's daylight out.
And it's better right after.
And it's better, as we learn, right after Shachris. That's certainly a more ideal time to do it right away.
I'm thinking in terms of Rosh Hashanah in particular,
as
opposed to the rest of the year. There's some
notion. I have to look.
There's a business about Lakela or Thin that it should not be done before a certain time of day on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. We do,
and that's why it's pushed to Musaf.
Yeah, it gets pushed to Musaf on the second day.
Right. I have to look it up. Yeah. Okay. Good. So let's finish this comment here of the Mishnah Berurah. We're in the middle of base. The Eli Rabbah found some little, idea he could rely on to maybe allow people who learn or daven after Chatzos. In the commentary of Bigdei Yesha, which is on the Mordechai was a Rishon, who was Ashkenazi Rishon, who was you can find in the back of most standard Gemaras. And the Parakama the Shabbos, in the first parak of Shabbos, Kosav Gamkein Shemota Lilmodu Lispal Ad Chatzos, that it is permissible to learn and to daven until Chatzos. But it doesn't say past Chatzos. I'm just putting it out there.
What's the third?
Yeah, so like the I have to imagine here.
It says his after Chatzos.
Well, that was the Eli Rabbah. Then the Mordechai here says it's mutter gamkein, right? Because of gamkein shemutter lilmod ulispel ad chatzos. I guess the idea being here that you will end up being late as a result of the. He is using a little bit the language of ad sheshos. Right? It's also to daven ad sheshos, and here you're davening ad chatzos. And therefore perhaps that's my best explanation here is that will cause you to be late to have something to eat to make kiddush. Not that you continue the learning past chatzos, but that the learning, was the cause for being late for making kiddush. So that's my best take on it. Should we see if he maybe gives a little clarification
here?
Yeah.
But the Magen Avraham quotes a minhag that goes by when you get up, meaning that people used to get up at dawn.
Yeah.
You start the 12 hours.
Yeah.
So nobody gets up at dawn.
Right.
The guy makes the bagels.
The Magen Avraham says he counts it from the time that you wake up.
Right.
That was one of the points I was about to make. Yes.
The
6 hours is the time you wake up.
Right.
Correct. So that's a very fair point. So the Magen Avraham is in the extra comments that Jeffrey.
No.
The Magen Avraham in number 1, he says, to quote Steve, right? The Magen Avraham says the 6 hours he was lenient to start the 6-hour clock until after you woke up. So some people who are sleeping late, it might be relying on the Magen Avraham's, svara. Not everybody, as you can imagine, would agree with this. But nonetheless, that is something that exists out there as a semech lahakel. One other piece that I think is important to know that the Aruch HaShulchan mentions, which is just very practical. It was a community, it was a rav of a community. So you have to think sometimes very practically about what the situations are. He writes here, this is in, so if you're following us at the end of Sif Aleph, Steve, it's towards the very end. He says, "V'davar pashut hu, she'im kiddush v'achal kezayis kodem chatzos, yachol lahamtin ad achar chatzos." Obviously, if you made kiddush at some point before chatzos and you had a kezayis of food, you're good to go. You can go past chatzos in terms of when you actually have your meal. V'chein, he says, nireli. This is his now opinion, as the Aruch HaShulchan, as the Rav of the Kehila, right? When you have coffee or tea, you have some hot drink before davening, as is you'll see here, as everybody is doing.
Coffee and cake.
Right. The cake, by the way, is questionable, but it's tricky. But the coffee for sure. The coffee.
We put out a coffee and cake tradition between 8 and 10.
Oh yeah, I know. So the coffee is not questionable even. The cake is a little. We're going to get to it probably later on in a couple of simanim. It's a little more questionable. So he says the kishashos t'chamin kodem hatfila gam kein mutar lahamdin ad achar chatzos shahara yotza michlal tanis.
Wow.
You had your coffee. Yeah. You had your cup of coffee. That's not called tanis.
It's not done.
It's not a kiddush?
That I can't have coffee? No, you don't.
No, I'm saying it's not I thought you had to have kiddush before chatzos.
You have to have. You can't be fasting. The issue is fasting. The way you would break your fast, because if you've davened already, the only way to break your fast halachically is to make kiddush. But if you have coffee before davening, as is by the way, as he says, look at his words. V'zeu maisim b'chol yom. People have coffee every day. And what do they do? And so first of all, they have their coffee, and he says the maisim b'chol yom she'osin kiddush v'tomim mita'emes. V'tomim mita'emes. Like tasty things. They're tasting tasty things. They're having tasty. Something tasty.
You have to use a note on this.
Right. So every Shabbos, people make kiddush. They have a little mashahu. And then what happens? You eat lunch at 1:00. Because what happens? This is what we do every week. We have kiddush. We never had the full meal. We didn't have the seuda, right? But we had kiddush from Kol Seuda. We didn't have our seuda with lechem. That's every week. That's literally Baisim B'chol Yom. They also had kiddush in those days too. What we call kiddush, And the thing he adds here is his opinion. He feels that if you have the coffee, right, so if on Rosh Hashanah this year, remember it, before davening on Rosh Hashanah, you have your cup of coffee, then you're good because you're yotzam, you're yotzam michlal tanis. That's not called fasting, even on a regular fast day. It's gonna be a Tuesday and there's a fast that falls out. If you have coffee, you broke the fast.
So I know in general, in terms of the idea of having coffee any morning before davening.
Yeah.
I think Mr. Brewer says you could put broken sugar in it.
That Rav Moshe. Rav Moshe is the one who the chiddush that you could put sugar. Because why? Why can I put sugar? Because why is it a chiddush? Because if it was just about okay, this is like it's like putting like gas into a car. That's what coffee is for a lot of people. It's putting like gas into the car so that I could function. But you know what? It's okay. It could taste good too. It's okay. So Rav Moshe, I think it was Rav Moshe, if I'm not mistaken, said you could add sugar to it. But the idea there is that you're really not taking care of your needs. You're having it's almost like how I need to get started today. If you need to have you feel parched in the morning, I often will have a glass of water in the morning. I feel parched. I'm thirsty. I don't want to be dehydrated. I'm not like it's not like I'm having toast with butter or like I'm not like taking care of my I'm not like finding the pleasure in it. That's why it was a bit of a chiddush that you can have sugar. But that's how people have coffee all the time with a spoon of sugar. So therefore you could have that and milk. Yeah, and milk. Yeah,
Right.
that's the normal way to have it. So it's not like suddenly, I'm really even if you enjoy your coffee, but it's not like I'm really now I'm delving into a meal that feels so delicious and yummy and good and I'm not taking care of myself before not taking care of not worried about those kinds of physical needs before I take care of my spiritual needs.
So it's like when you get up, breakfast is actually when I taught break fast. So
right.
What do you have? Do you have a cup of tea, or you kind of
you can always have tea and coffee in the morning, according to halacha, and obviously some water. Plain water is also good. And then if you should have them first. Then afterwards, you'll have whatever you want to enjoy for your breakfast. That's a different story. If you have a doctor who's telling you you have to take a pill in the morning at a certain time and it needs to be before davening, particularly as long as on Shabbos, then you need to do that. This is a din d'Rabbanan, and you're to not take care of one's health. It's going to cause some sort of health issue, even if it's not. By the way, I think that's not even if it's like a danger. Even if it's going to cause you, real much discomfort or whatever, it's not good for your body. You should take the medication when you take it in whatever food. Speak to the Rav when you have, the head rabbi when you have a Yom Kippur situation and medication.
Apropos to Rav Moshe, I grew up in son-in-law's shul of Tenla, and Rav Tenla every Yom Tov would get up and he said, because it's Man Simchatenu, I don't want to share your simcha, so I'm not talking. Every Yom Tov he was saying the same.
There you go. That's right. That's Rabbi J.J. Schachter's strategy on Yontif. He was told us younger Rabbanim. He said I would speak on the first day because Chatzi LaHashem, and then he said I didn't speak on the second day because Chatzi LaChem. Half of it for you. So second day he didn't speak. Yes, Simeon. Yes, go ahead.
Rabbi, I'm not sure I heard correctly, but before when you were discussing Sha'od Zmaniot, somebody raised a question about starting counting when you get up.
Yes, the Magen Avraham raised it.
And you acknowledge that positively.
Yes, it is an opinion.
I cannot understand that.
Many are in agreement with you that that is the Magen Avraham's take on things, which is that and the Mishnah Berurah brings this earlier in Shulchan Aruch. It talks about the laws of just I think it's the laws of what do you do after davening and eating and whatever. And he talks about there that if you get up late after Alos HaShachar, that the 6 hour clock starts only at that point. That's his chiddush. Many others disagree with him, and they say that's not what the Gemara was talking about. That's not how you should understand and interpret the text. But I just simply am acknowledging his take on it. Whether that's what we should follow or not, that's a separate question.
But Rav, what you have is for example, two Jews living across the street from one another. functioning as Jews according to a different clock.
Yes, that would be the implication of the bargain of rum. Yes, it would be that everyone is on their own clock. Yes.
And you don't find that absurd?
I find it to be a challenging opinion in terms of like I don't know that was what the text meant when it said you can't fast until chatzos, that it means until your 6 or ad shows, it's your shows.
Well,
yeah.
He is or he isn't saying that. It sounds to me like there is such a daya, and it does have a following. And
yes.
I find that absurd.
I hear
how could
everyone
it be?
is entitled to an opinion. Yeah, I understand. I understand why it's a tough opinion to accept. I do.
Oh, you're making it sound like one of these political discussions where everybody's got an opinion.
I get it. I get it. I'm not personally comfortable relying on that, but that's I don't want to say all these Jews who followed it. They were over. Okay, let's take a look here at
Rav. Most shuls publish the starting times of davening, publish the time of candle lighting, publish the time when it's Motzei Shabbat, and everybody follows that. Except I'm not going to follow that because I have my own clock, and I don't care that I live in the community, and I don't care that I rely on the Rav. I'm going to do what I want to do.
I hear. Yeah, again, only for this particular halacha that the clock is different. But yes, I hear the challenge. I very much understand it. Let's take a look at Sif Beis. Here we go. Yesh Omrim. Sha'adam shemazik lo ha'achila. This is in the Shulchan Aruch up on top. Da'az oneg hu shelo lechol lo yochal. Now everyone's going to get upset at me. Simeon's about to get upset about the next thing I'm about to say, which is that there are those who say, okay, there are those who say that a person who is damaged, who is hurt by eating, yeah, that for them it's an oneg not to eat. It's a delight not to eat, and they shouldn't eat. Who are we talking about here?
People who are sick.
Yeah, exactly. People who are sick, maybe who for them, we've all been there, where sometimes like, I don't want to eat right now. I feel so sick right now. I'm nauseous. I don't want. For me to eat something, I could never imagine it. Now, you're not like, oh, if I don't eat, it's like Oneg Shabbos here. But it's more Oneg Shabbos to not eat than to eat. We've all been there. We all have moments like that where like maybe you got some illness, it could be a stomach illness. It could be I'm Baruch Hashem, I don't have it too often, but like sometimes I get migraines, and when I do, I get very nauseous, and forget it. I wouldn't want to eat. I wouldn't want to eat a drop of anything. And for me to just lie on the couch is more Oneg Shabbos than to try to force myself to eat if in those moments. So, we can all think of times, when, by the way, or somebody, let's imagine somebody who's, worse than what I'm describing about a migraine, right? Somebody who's in the hospital, and for them, to eat a lot. We know people who are sometimes in the situation for them to eat, struggle. They don't. It doesn't digest well. They're very restricted in terms of what they can put in their body. We can also come up with a scenario where sometimes eating is not so simple, and maybe it's better not to eat. Maybe they get their through an IV, whatever. I don't know. They're getting their nutrition. By the way, actually, I can think of somebody. Right, I'm going to keep it vague here because I think this family members of this person who watch. There's someone who I happen to know in my own life who they cannot eat because of something that occurred to them. They all get their nutrition totally through an IV every day. They can have liquids, but they can't have solids. So for them to eat would be a mazik. It literally would damage their body. Yes, good.
Haggling over a word, but would you even use the word oneg to describe it or not an oneg? I mean, if something's going on,
I would say it's more of a delight that you don't than you do.
Why are they even using the word oneg?
Because the whole reason that I have to eat is because of Oneg Shabbos. Because the Oneg is the delighting piece, and that's usually through food, through a seuda. But for me, that Oneg is not the meal. That is. So I think it is utilizing the term not in a literal sense. This is my take, meaning that it's an oneg to not eat, as much as it's more of an oneg to not eat than eat. More in the comparative. Yeah, I don't know. That's yeah.
Otherwise, oneg sounds. There's a symmetry in language which feels forced as opposed to saying, but someone who's.
Right, because the idea is you should try to choose the path on Shabbos that brings about the most joy and delight, and that's really the trick here. And so that's why the next part. Look at the Ramah. V'chein mishi yesh lo oneg im yivke kedei sheyelech hatzar milibo muter livkos b'Shabbos. And so too, someone who finds the delight, and again, not like a delight as if I'm smiling, but I feel more at ease and more at peace. Oneg is almost like this tranquility of delighting. It's not like a smile on my face. It's like a feeling of I don't know what the right word is there. It's just like a feeling of fullness, And so anyone who gets that kind of sense from crying because the pain will leave their heart, then it's permissible to cry on Shabbos. Otherwise, it's not really crying is not such a Shabbos activity. But if it helps you feel at ease, and we all know, by the way, I remember once Dr. Pelkovitz at YU in one of these pastoral counseling type of classes. So he pointed out that there are studies that if you analyze a human being's tears, there are stress hormones in them, but not only when it's a cry. That's a real cry. If you cry because you're cutting onions, there are no stress hormones in those tears. So that's why sometimes when you cry, actually you feel better afterwards because you actually released some hormones that were really causing you a lot of angst. And so sometimes actually crying on a scientific level also does help you release some of the pain from your from what we're feeling. So anyway, so then it's permissible. Take a look at the Mishnah Berurah. Let's look at Sifkat and Gimel and Dalet. Lo yochal. This is talking about the first point about the not eating because it may damage us. V'chimat karov le'isur ha'achila. And it's like maybe it's like even coming close to that of the eating is actually prohibited for this person for whatever reason that they have. Kaven shemishar sheyaziklo. You kind of mishayar, you kind of measure, you kind of feel like this is not going to be good. This is going to be a bad outcome from eating. So v'hainu in gam kazayis kasher lo lechol. That's even if we're talking about even kazayis is hard for them because if they can have a kazayis, they can have a kazayis. That's the minimum, and you're good. V'ayin lekaman b'sim in Reish Tzadi Aleph, Sif Aleph, Behaga. He says, take a look at Reish Tzadi Aleph, Sif Aleph, in the Ramah over there, just to show you what it says over there. Yeah, take a look here. Where's this? Right here. It's talking about being careful about this is the simon about shalashudas, and he says you should be careful about shalashudas, etc. V'imi efshar lo klal echol. That's why you can't eat shalashudas. Well, it's not that you can't ever do it, but sometimes in the winter, it's like you finish lunch and it's like mincha, and you go to shul and it's shalashudas. You're like, I don't want this tuna and egg salad. I'm full. I had So he says if you can't have food, you don't have to put yourself in pain and eat more so that you're plotting and you can't stand up. He says one of the great lines in all of rabbinic literature. Right? The wise person has eyes on his head. Right? Have a vision. Maybe you don't eat too much now, so you could have another meal later, right? Instead of going all in and eating everything and 3 times over of the first meal on a short Shabbos. And then the Ramah there says, "Umishalo achal b'leil Shabbos, yochal shalosh b'yom Shabbos." If you have to be really cautious and careful. Then if you miss a meal, you have to make it up. If you missed if you didn't eat on Leil Shabbos, you have to make up 3 meals on Shabbos day. So if this is the kind of situation where like I couldn't eat it, you couldn't eat at night, you have to be careful about spacing out the meals during the daytime. Anyways, yeah. Okay, that's what we have over here. Let's take a look at Daled. Then I'll come to you in a second to say, let me just finish this. Hatzar bilibo, the pain in your heart. This is about the crying piece. So Kostav Hataz, the Taz writes, Hainu, Dafka imecha masrov dveikuso b'HaKadosh Baruch Hu zolgim einav dmos. The Taz limited this crying business to only if it's because of such a dveikus, such connection, such a spiritual connection you have with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, that it's so intense that there are tears coming out. That I feel such an intensity with the Kodesh Baruch Hu and a closeness on Shabbos that the tears start coming out because of that dveikus. By the way, I don't think of myself as one of these people, but I know people, and they think about like sometimes like some of the like Rav Hershel Schachter. If you ever hear him talk about the Beis Hamikdash, suddenly he'll pause and he'll choke up, and there are tears in his eyes. And I wish I had that. I don't know. It's not me. And not because I don't want it to be me, but there are people who you meet them and they talk about certain things and like they have a certain level of dveikus with Hashem that I can only aspire to. And he writes here, Shekain Matzinu b'Rabbi Akiva b'Zohar Chadash. There's the stories of Rabbi Akiva and the Zohar. Shahaya bocha me'od be'amro shir hashirim. There's a tradition that people say shir hashirim on Shabbos as Shabbos comes in. Maybe so he would. So I didn't say it. Yeah, there you go. And the stories that Rabbi Akiva would be reading Shir Hashir. There's a relationship between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Jewish people, and Rabbi Akiva's crying. He's crying because of the dveikus, the closeness with Hashem. Ba'asher sheyadash hechan hadvarim magiyim, so that he knows how will the matters come about. It's giving him depth in terms of understanding the relationship between God and the Jewish people. V'cheinu matzli b'mispalim b'chavana. And this are also stories, by the way, about Rabbi Akiva would start davening. He would start davening on one side of the room, and before he somehow would find himself on the other side of the room at the end of Shemona Esrei because he was so intense in his tefillah, and he was okay. Aval stam livkos kadei sheyetze atzar milibo lo, says the Taz. I ain't sham. Go see the Taz if you want the whole quote. But he says that to just cry to get the pain out on Shabbos, hold it in, cram it in. You don't need to get it out. Now, the Aliyah Wrestler, those who are like, what do you mean? But if I need to cry, I'll cry. So don't worry. Aval the Aliyah Rabbi v'tosef Shabbos titiru kevin shal yedei v'chiso yirvach lo. Because the Aliyah Rabbi on Tosef Shabbos, they're like, no, like we sort of explained it first. Because when you cry, as the number 8 here, if you're looking at Jeffrey, right? The Mate Yehuda explains even further. If I don't give you a chance to cry for a little bit, then the whole Shabbos you'll be holding on to that pain. Better that you cry for 1 hour and then not sitting in pain the entire Shabbos. That you're not holding in the whatever emotional pain. And therefore, again, if you need to cry on Shabbos for whatever reason, you hear something difficult, you experience something difficult, you can't suppress your emotions. I hear what the Taz is saying, but that's really tough. I don't know. I find that to be really tough that somebody shouldn't be able to feel what they feel. That's hard. Again, you're just cramming it in. And like the Mate Yehuda says, you're really going to be stewing in the middle of Shabbos. Okay. Let me see if there's anything lasting thing to say here about this in the Aruch HaShulchan. Yeah. So he says here, the idea of Shabbos is to give into delight, not to feel pain. If eating is painful, then that's not a good idea because of the lashon yesh omrim. V'lav mishum sheyesh cholkim bazeh, ela sheken darko bedavar shemotzi hadin rak mesupak echad kosev b'lashon yesh omrim. Interesting. He points out just generally here. It's a very fascinating rule. He says, notice how the Shulchan Aruch wrote here yesh omrim, not because there was a second opinion about the whole matter about the eating and the pain. He says, but sometimes that you write yesh omrim when you're not sure. You're not sure. You're like, I think. That does it say? Like, I think this sounds like the right halacha. They're masupak about the din. But nonetheless, he writes that's a general statement about yesh omrims that only have one opinion. It's not because they argue; it's that it's kain darko b'davar shemotzi hadin rak misupak. Echad echad kosta b'lashon yesh rak misupak. There's only one doubtful opinion. Then you write it as yesh omrim. But anyways, that is to me makes a lot of sense. Again, if a person is going to be hurt by the eating, they shouldn't eat, and however they get their nutrition, and that's a wrap on that halacha. Okay, we'll continue next week with Sif Dalid. Gimel, and this is going to touch on Rabbi Yehuda Chassid, who gets mentioned, gets a name shout out explicitly by the Shulchan Aruch about fasting. Who basically fasts every day. A person who fasts every day until 2, 3, 4, or 5 in the afternoon. This is their spirituality. They have a certain on Shabbos they're going to change. So there's so Rabbi Yehuda Chassid would apparently do this every week. He would fast on Shabbos until a certain point, I guess. So we're going to talk about is that permissible? How did he do that? And then we'll get into the topic on Dalit of Tanis Cholom, about the dream that occurred that is going to cause you to have to fast because of what horrible things you envisioned in the dream. So we'll talk about that mystical, mysterious topic next week. All right, take care, everybody. Stay. I read a question, so question. Go ahead. Yeah,
Rav, I wanted to tell you something that you may not be aware of, but when we expanded the shul the first time, the Rav HaMachshir, the oversight of the plans, and who came down to examine as the job was going on, was Rav Herschel Schachter.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow. Really? In fact, he made one correction that I know, which had the underlying concrete from the front bima, which is part of the aron, the front of the shul, and the shulchan in the middle of the shul were connected with like a concrete strip on the same level, so you could walk from one to the other without going down or going up. And he objected to that. And the removal and repairs and replacement ran approximately 10K.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I remember that explicitly. Also, you were dealing with the difference between Oneg and Simcha. Oneg Shabbos, Simchas Yom Tov.
Correct.
Pleasure and joy.
Yeah. Yes, correct. They're different. The nature of the day are different. 100%. Yeah. By the way, just to point out to Steve's addition over here, this is the Oz Vahadar. That whole you just point out the throwing the stone into the into the bottle, right? And it can then start to go sour as a result of that. So what they would do is zorkin letocha evan. They would throw a stone to fill it up. Kalomar kashem sha'evan eina mo'ila liyayin kach bezo ha'achila lo yitosaf lo koach. Just like that, the stone doesn't really do anything to help the wine. So too, the eating, once you're like so hungry, that little bit of eating doesn't really do you any good either. Once you're so hungry, right? Okay, thank you for pointing that out. They didn't have that in here. That's the where did he get that from?
I looked. It sounds like it's on Rashi somewhere. There was no reference
there.
Gemara.
Right. Okay. Fascinating. Okay. Oh, he talks about it more here.
Yeah.
Right. He quotes Aruch HaShulchan that I brought in. Yeah. Okay. Very nice. Yeah. Thank you. Okay.
Let's get to know what
Okay.